When security tried to remove a woman from backstage during Kendrick Lamar's sold-out concert, they had no idea she owned the entire venue. What happened next stunned thousands of fans and ignited a movement that would transform an industry forever. The atmosphere in the Phoenix Concert Hall was electric. Fans in Denver, Colorado were on their feet, swaying to the rhythm as Kendrick Lamar delivered verse after powerful verse. The bass pulsed through the floor, lights flashed across the crowd, and the air was thick with anticipation and excitement. Everything seemed perfect until a confrontation erupted backstage that would change the trajectory of the night and many lives forever. Just before intermission, a woman in an impeccably tailored navy pantsuit appeared near the backstage entrance. She was tall with natural hair styled in an elegant updo, her posture exuding quiet confidence. Despite her professional appearance, she stood out dramatically against the backdrop of casual concert staff and tour personnel. No backstage pass hung around her neck, no event credentials, no clipboard, just unwavering confidence and that striking suit. At first, the crowd remained oblivious, focused entirely on Kendrick's performance. But when two burly security guards began approaching her with obvious intent, a subtle shift occurred in the energy of those nearby. People began to notice, whispers started, and phones slowly turned away from the stage. "Hey, you can't be here," one of the guards shouted, his voice carrying despite the pounding music. The woman stopped, casually sliding her hands into her pockets, completely unfazed by the confrontation. "I'm here on business," she replied, her tone measured but authoritative. "Business? Not without proper credentials," the second guard snapped, gesturing emphatically toward the public area. "Step back behind the barricade right now." The woman didn't flinch. Instead, she motioned toward the backstage area, her expression remaining composed. "That's my business over there." The guards weren't having it. One immediately reached for his radio, calling for backup. Fans standing near the confrontation leaned forward, sensing something unusual unfolding. Backstage crew members exchanged confused glances, uncertain about the woman's identity but concerned about the escalating tension. The woman shifted her weight slightly but maintained her position. "I don't need credentials," she said firmly. "You're making a serious mistake." The crowd's attention began to split between the concert and the unfolding drama as more security personnel approached. Murmurs transformed into intense speculation rippling through nearby spectators like electricity. What was about to happen would momentarily silence several thousand music fans. The guards now flanked the woman, their voices growing increasingly hostile as they insisted she leave. The scene was unfolding in full view of hundreds of nearby concertgoers. Even the powerful lyrics from the stage seemed to fade as people diverted their attention to the commotion near the backstage entrance. "Ma'am, this is your final warning," one guard announced, his hand moving ominously toward the radio clip to his shoulder. "You need to leave immediately or we'll forcibly escort you out." The woman remained impressively composed, her voice calm but resolute. "Escort me? Do you have any idea who I am?" The question appeared to further aggravate the security team. "We don't care who you are," the other guard retorted sharply. "Rules apply to everyone." From backstage, crew members and staff had begun to notice the confrontation. A few production assistants exchanged confused looks. One of the sound engineers, mid-adjustment on his console, froze and squinted toward the woman. "Is that," he muttered, trailing off uncertainly. The woman didn't raise her voice or lose her composure. Instead, she calmly retrieved her phone from her pocket and began scrolling through it. "I think you'll want to reconsider your approach," she said, holding the screen up toward them. But before she could show them whatever was on her display, one guard abruptly grabbed her arm. The aggressive move caused a collective gasp from onlookers. A wave of discomfort spread as nearby fans instinctively reached for their phones, recording the increasingly dramatic confrontation. "Let go of me," the woman said firmly, her voice carrying an unmistakable warning. The guard only tightened his grip, pulling her a step backward. The woman planted her feet, absolutely refusing to be moved. By now, several of the venue's cameras had turned toward the scene, broadcasting it across the massive screens flanking the stage. The music faltered slightly as even the performers became aware something unusual was happening. "What's going on over there?" called the DJ through the sound system, momentarily breaking the performance. The tour manager stepped closer to the commotion, his brow furrowed as he assessed the situation. And then recognition dawned on his face, which immediately drained of color. "Stop," the manager shouted, frantically waving toward the security guards. "Let her go right now." The guards froze, clearly confused. The manager rushed forward, weaving through equipment and personnel until he stood face to face with the woman. "Ms. Reynolds, I am so deeply sorry," he stammered, his voice low but urgent. The guards exchanged bewildered looks. "Ms. Reynolds?" One of them repeated, the name barely audible over the murmurs of the increasingly attentive crowd. "Yes," the tour manager confirmed, turning toward the guards with obvious alarm. "This is Alexandra Reynolds, the new owner of Phoenix Concert Hall." The words struck like lightning. Everyone within earshot, the guards, the crew, the nearby fans, seemed to freeze simultaneously. The guards' faces turned ashen as they slowly stepped back, their grip on her arm loosening instantly. "Owner," one whispered, his voice cracking with realization. The woman, Ms. Reynolds, smoothly adjusted her jacket, brushing off her sleeves as though nothing unusual had transpired. "That's correct," she said, looking directly at the guards. "I own this venue." A wave of shock rippled through everyone who heard. Gasps, whispers, and exclamations filled the area as word spread rapidly. On the giant screens, Reynolds' composed face was now visible to thousands, her calm expression in stark contrast to the chaos erupting around her. But the moment wasn't over. In fact, it was about to take an even more dramatic turn. The tension throughout Phoenix Concert Hall was palpable. Thousands of eyes locked onto the woman who had just been identified as the venue's new owner. The energy shifted rapidly from confusion to shock, then to something heavier, a collective discomfort that seemed to spread through the crowd like wildfire. Conversations erupted throughout the venue. "Wait, she's the owner? Why didn't they recognize her? Did they seriously think she didn't belong there? Is this happening for real right now?" The security guards stood frozen, wide-eyed and visibly uncomfortable. One of them finally stammered, We didn't know, ma'am. We were just doing our job." Ms. Reynolds tilted her head slightly, her gaze steady and penetrating. "Doing your job," she said, her tone sharp yet measured. "Or making assumptions that weren't yours to make?" The guard opened his mouth to respond, but no words emerged. Cameras zoomed in on Reynolds' face, her image now filling the giant screens on either side of the stage. Even Kendrick Lamar had paused his performance, watching the scene unfold with the rest of the stunned audience. Alexandra Reynolds' expression softened slightly as she addressed the tour manager. "Thank you for stepping in," she said, offering a brief but appreciative nod. "But this moment isn't just about me. It's about what just happened and why it happened." The manager nodded silently, stepping aside to give Reynolds space. Slowly, deliberately, she turned back to face the security guards. "I'm not angry," she said, her voice calm but piercing through the hushed venue. "But I am deeply disappointed, not just in you, but in how frequently this happens to people who look like me." Her statement landed heavily, drawing a mix of gasps and murmurs from the audience. Some fans nodded vigorously in agreement while others shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of their own biases. One of the guards attempted to apologize again, but Reynolds raised her hand. "No need for excuses. I'd rather we focus on the lesson here," she said firmly. With that, she began walking toward the center of the stage where all eyes were already riveted to her. Kendrick Lamar, recognizing the significance of the moment, stepped aside with respect, giving her the spotlight. Alexandra Reynolds stepped onto the center stage, the overhead lights casting a commanding glow around her figure. The roar of the concert had quieted to a hum of hushed voices. Even the band members stood motionless, instruments temporarily forgotten as they turned their full attention to her. Someone handed her a microphone, but it almost seemed unnecessary. Her presence was so magnetic that her voice might have carried through the venue regardless. "I didn't come here tonight to make a scene," she began, her voice steady and controlled. "But I certainly didn't expect to become one." The silence in the venue deepened. Thousands of phones raised across the crowd, capturing every word, every gesture. "What happened just now wasn't just about me," she continued, gesturing toward the security guards who remained frozen near the backstage entrance. "It's about something much larger. A mindset, a pervasive habit of making assumptions about who belongs and who doesn't." A ripple of agreement moved through large sections of the crowd while others listened with growing self-awareness. "You didn't recognize me," Reynolds said, addressing the guards directly but speaking to everyone present, "because I didn't fit your mental image of what a venue owner should look like. And I could stand here right now and let that pass as a simple misunderstanding. But if I did that, what message would I be sending to these artists? To these fans? To myself? The crowd listened with rapt attention. Reynolds' words were heavy with meaning, but her delivery was smooth and thoughtful, as though she were speaking individually to each person present. "You see, assumptions are dangerous," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "They don't just create moments of embarrassment or discomfort. They perpetuate barriers. They send subtle but powerful messages that some people don't belong in certain spaces, when in reality it's those barriers themselves that don't belong." Reynolds paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle over the crowd. A few fans began applauding tentatively at first, then with growing conviction. "This venue, this music, this community we've created here tonight, they represent something far bigger than entertainment," she said, her voice gaining strength and passion. "They represent unity, a place where talent, creativity, and shared passion bring diverse people together. And I'm proud to own this concert hall, not because of what it adds to my investment portfolio, but because of what it means to break those barriers down." Applause began spreading through the venue, hesitant at first, but quickly building into something powerful. Reynolds raised her hand again, quieting the growing support. "I didn't come here to play the victim," she said firmly. "I came to illuminate a lesson we all need to internalize. Never let someone's appearance dictate how you treat them. Not backstage at this concert, not in this venue, not in this world." The crowd erupted in thunderous applause and cheers that echoed throughout the entire concert hall. Reynolds nodded once, acknowledging their response, then turned toward the security guards who remained near the stage. "And I sincerely hope that after tonight, you'll carry that lesson with you too." The guards, visibly shaken, nodded back, their faces a complicated mix of embarrassment and understanding. Reynolds extended her hand to each of them, offering a firm handshake. The gesture was both gracious and symbolic, a public act of reconciliation rather than retribution. But this extraordinary story was far from over. This pivotal moment was merely the catalyst that would ignite a much larger conversation. If you've ever felt judged based on appearance rather than ability, let me know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this true story of courage and change, please subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. The applause continued long after Alexandra Reynolds handed the microphone back to Kendrick Lamar and made her way to the owner's box. On the massive screens, cameras followed her progress, and the audience couldn't look away. What had begun as a tense misunderstanding had transformed into a moment of reckoning and inspiration for thousands. By the time the concert ended, social media was already ablaze with activity. Clips of the confrontation and Reynolds' impromptu speech flooded every platform, accumulating millions of views within hours. Hashtags like #WhoGetsToExist and #ReynoldsRevolution began trending, sparking passionate debates and discussions that extended far beyond the music industry. The following morning, news outlets dissected every moment of the incident. Some praised Reynolds for her composure and eloquence, calling her response a masterclass in leadership and dignity. Others criticized the security staff, demanding accountability for what many viewed as an obvious case of racial profiling. But Alexandra Reynolds wasn't interested in fueling division or targeting the security guards. Instead, she released a statement that went viral for its wisdom and compassion. "Last night wasn't about shaming individuals. It was about learning and teaching. I hope we all remember that what we assume about others reveals more about ourselves than about them. Let's commit to doing better together." The statement resonated deeply across diverse communities. Within days, entertainment venues, corporations, and even educational institutions began using Reynolds' speech as a powerful teaching tool. Workshops addressing unconscious bias sprouted across the country, with her story serving as the central case study. Even the security guards involved in the incident stepped forward, issuing public apologies and agreeing to participate in the conversation. Reynolds met with them privately, ensuring their growth became part of the larger narrative rather than making them targets of public scorn. "We're all learning," she emphasized during a televised interview that garnered millions of views. "The important thing isn't that we make mistakes, it's that we're willing to acknowledge them and grow from them." Meanwhile, Reynolds' story catalyzed deeper conversations within the entertainment industry itself. Venue owners, promoters, artists, and staff began reflecting on their own biases and how they could work toward genuine inclusivity, not just in public spaces but in hiring practices, leadership positions, and community outreach. Kendrick Lamar himself became an outspoken advocate, incorporating themes from the incident into his subsequent performances. During his next tour, he invited Reynolds to join him on stage in several cities, using their platform to continue the conversation about belonging and representation. But perhaps the most profound impact emerged through the countless personal stories that began pouring in from across the nation. Letters, emails, and social media messages flooded Reynolds' office, some sharing painful experiences of exclusion, others expressing gratitude for her courage in speaking out. One message particularly touched Reynolds. It came from a young aspiring music producer in Memphis who wrote, "I've always loved creating music, but sometimes I feel like I don't belong in recording studios because I look different from everyone else there. After seeing what you did, I feel proud to pursue my passion. Thank you for showing that we all belong in the spaces we love." Reynolds shared this letter during a press conference, her voice thick with emotion. "This," she said, holding the letter up for journalists to see, "this is precisely why I spoke up that night. Because no one should ever feel like they don't belong in spaces where their talents and passions lead them." The moment had transcended its origins. What began as a confrontation at a concert had blossomed into a movement, and it showed no signs of slowing down. 3 months after the incident, the impact of Reynolds' actions continued reverberating throughout the entertainment industry and beyond. Phoenix Concert Hall, inspired by its owner's leadership, launched an initiative called Harmony in Diversity, a multifaceted campaign focused on inclusivity in entertainment venues and community outreach programs. Workshops were conducted in schools, community centers, and corporate settings, teaching the importance of recognizing and challenging our unconscious biases. Reynolds herself became a sought-after speaker, bringing her message to spaces that needed it most. She never leaned into anger or resentment when sharing her story. Instead, she used her experience to build bridges between diverse communities. "Assumptions are walls," she often said during her presentations. "But awareness is the sledgehammer that breaks them down." Perhaps most surprisingly, the security guards from that pivotal night became unexpected allies in the movement. Both participated in several panels and workshops, speaking candidly about their experience and the lessons they'd internalized. "I didn't realize how quickly I judged people based on appearance until that night," one admitted during a widely viewed panel discussion. "Ms. Reynolds taught me something profound through that experience. And now I'm dedicated to teaching others what I've learned." Phoenix Concert Hall itself became a symbol of transformation. A beautifully designed plaque was installed at the main entrance, engraved with Reynolds' powerful words, "Never let someone's appearance dictate how you treat them." Concertgoers frequently stopped to take photographs with it, many sharing their own reflections on how the story had affected their perspectives. 6 months after the incident, during a special anniversary concert featuring multiple artists including Kendrick Lamar, something extraordinary happened. Before the show began, Alexandra Reynolds was invited to center stage to address the sold-out venue. This time, there was no misunderstanding, no hesitation. The cheers were deafening as she stepped into the spotlight. The venue had transformed into a sea of faces, united under a message of inclusion and respect. Reynolds approached the microphone with the same quiet confidence she had shown that fateful night. "Tonight isn't just about music," Reynolds began, her voice carrying effortlessly across the packed concert hall. "It's about what this industry, and our world, can become when we stop viewing differences as barriers and start recognizing them as strengths. Remember, you belong. We all do." The crowd erupted in thunderous applause as artists took the stage with renewed purpose. It wasn't just a concert anymore. It was a statement about the power of challenging assumptions and creating spaces where everyone feels welcome. Throughout the entertainment district surrounding Phoenix Concert Hall, the effects of Reynolds' message were visible. Other venues had implemented training programs for their staff. Diversity in hiring had increased noticeably. Artists from underrepresented backgrounds were finding more opportunities to showcase their talents. Local businesses even joined the movement, displaying "All welcome here" signs that had become synonymous with Reynolds' message. Schools incorporated lessons about unconscious bias into their curricula, using age-appropriate versions of Reynolds' story to help young people understand the impact of assumptions. What happened that night at Phoenix Concert Hall wasn't just about one person's experience, a sociology professor explained during a community forum. It was a mirror held up to society, revealing patterns that many of us had become desensitized to. Alexandra Reynolds didn't just speak up for herself. She spoke up for countless others who have felt the sting of exclusion. Meanwhile, Reynolds continued expanding her influence. She established a foundation dedicated to increasing diversity in entertainment venue ownership and management. The foundation provided scholarships, mentorship programs, and startup funding for individuals from underrepresented groups interested in careers in the industry. Change doesn't happen through words alone, Reynolds explained during the foundation's launch event. It happens through creating pathways and opportunities. It happens when we don't just talk about inclusion but actively build systems that enable it. The security company that had employed the guards involved in the incident underwent a complete transformation as well. They revamped their training programs, emphasizing cultural competency and bias awareness. They diversified their hiring practices and created accountability systems to prevent similar incidents. "We could have treated this as a PR problem to manage," the company's CEO acknowledged during an industry conference. "Instead, we chose to see it as an opportunity to become better, not just as security professionals, but as human beings contributing to more welcoming spaces." The ripple effects continued spreading outward. Other industries began examining their own practices and environments. Technology companies, financial institutions, healthcare organizations all started implementing lessons learned from what was now widely known as the Reynolds Revolution. Social scientists began studying what they termed the Reynolds effect, the remarkable way one person's dignified response to discrimination could catalyze widespread social change. Case studies were written, research was conducted, and the incident became part of curriculum in business schools and social science programs nationwide. "What makes this case so powerful," explained Dr. Elaine Thompson, a professor of organizational behavior, "is that Reynolds chose education over humiliation. She could have used her position of power to punish, but instead she created a teachable moment that resonated with millions. That's why it's had such staying power." On the one-year anniversary of the incident, a documentary titled Belonging: The Alexandra Reynolds Story premiered to critical acclaim. The film not only recounted the events of that night but explored the broader context of exclusion in American institutions and the ongoing work to create more inclusive spaces. "I agreed to participate in this film for one reason," Reynolds explained during a post-screening discussion. "Because stories have power. They help us see ourselves in others. They help us recognize patterns we might otherwise miss. And most importantly, they help us imagine different possibilities for our future." The documentary featured interviews with the security guards who spoke candidly about their journey. "That night changed the trajectory of my life," one reflected. "It forced me to confront biases I didn't even know I had. It was painful but necessary. I'm grateful for the growth, even though I regret what caused it." Reynolds' approach, focusing on learning rather than punishment, had proven remarkably effective. Survey data showed that punitive responses to bias incidents often led to defensiveness and resistance, while educational approaches like hers resulted in deeper, more lasting change. If you've experienced a moment that changed your perspective on inclusion and belonging, share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more transformative stories that challenge us to create a more equitable world. As the second year after the incident began, Alexandra Reynolds expanded her vision further. Phoenix Concert Hall launched a groundbreaking apprenticeship program specifically designed to create pathways into entertainment venue management for individuals from underrepresented backgrounds. "It's not enough to talk about diversity," Reynolds explained during the program's launch. "We need to actively dismantle barriers and create opportunities. This program isn't charity. It's an investment in extraordinary talent that has been systematically overlooked." The program quickly became a model for the industry, with other venues across the country developing similar initiatives. Graduates from the first cohort secured positions throughout the entertainment sector, bringing fresh perspectives and innovative ideas to an industry that had long struggled with homogeneity. Meanwhile, Reynolds continued sharing her story, not to center herself, but to keep the conversation alive. She spoke at universities, corporate retreats, and community events, always emphasizing the same core message. Belonging isn't something we give to others. It's something we recognize as everyone's inherent right. The language around inclusion began shifting in subtle but significant ways. Rather than focusing exclusively on diversity metrics, more organizations started examining their culture of belonging, whether people of all backgrounds felt valued, respected, and heard. "The numbers matter," Reynolds acknowledged during a panel discussion. "But they're just the beginning. What really transforms an environment is when everyone feels they can bring their full, authentic selves to the table without fear of judgment or exclusion." Phoenix Concert Hall itself continued evolving. Under Reynolds' leadership, it became known as the most inclusive venue in the country. From its hiring practices to its programming choices to its community engagement, everything reflected a commitment to creating space for diverse voices and experiences. The venue's annual Belonging Festival became a highly anticipated event featuring artists from underrepresented backgrounds and workshops on creating inclusive environments. Proceeds supported scholarships for emerging artists and community arts programs in underserved neighborhoods. Even the physical space transformed. Reynolds commissioned artists from diverse backgrounds to create installations throughout the venue that celebrated the concept of belonging. The most prominent piece, situated in the main lobby, was a striking mural titled "We All Belong Here," created by a collective of artists from different cultural backgrounds. 3 years after the incident, Alexandra Reynolds published a book titled "Belonging: Transforming Moments of Exclusion into Movements for Change." The memoir manifesto became an instant bestseller, with readers praising its blend of personal narrative and practical guidance for creating more inclusive spaces. "This book isn't about me," Reynolds wrote in the introduction. "It's about all of us, our capacity to harm through unconscious bias, but also our remarkable ability to grow, to learn, and to create communities where everyone belongs." The book included contributions from numerous individuals who had experienced similar moments of exclusion, as well as from allies committed to creating change. It offered tools for recognizing bias, strategies for responding to exclusionary behavior, and frameworks for building truly inclusive organizations. At its core, though, the book returned to the powerful message Reynolds had delivered on stage that night: never let someone's appearance dictate how you treat them. The security guards, who had become unlikely advocates for inclusion, wrote a powerful chapter reflecting on their journey. "We could have become villains in this story," they acknowledged. "Instead, Ms. Reynolds gave us an opportunity to become better versions of ourselves. That gift of grace changed everything." As the book toured Reynolds across the country, she consistently highlighted local inclusion initiatives and amplified the voices of community organizers doing similar work. "This isn't about one incident or one person," she emphasized repeatedly. "It's about a movement that was already underway. A movement I was fortunate enough to contribute to." The impact continued expanding in ways no one could have predicted. Schools incorporated curricula about belonging and inclusion. Corporations redesigned their diversity training. Entertainment venues revamped their security protocols and staff education. Most significantly, thousands of individuals began recognizing and challenging their own biases, creating ripple effects in their communities. Parents had conversations with their children about inclusion. Managers examined their hiring practices. Friends called each other in when they noticed exclusionary behavior. What had begun as a painful moment of exclusion had transformed into a powerful catalyst for change. Alexandra Reynolds had taken an experience that might have left her bitter and instead used it to inspire a movement based on education, grace, and the fundamental truth that everyone deserves to belong. And it all started because one woman refused to be removed from a space that was rightfully hers. So the story leaves us with a challenge: what assumptions are we holding that limit others? What spaces are we creating or denying through our unconscious biases? Remember, change starts with awareness. It continues with action. And it transforms not just organizations but hearts and minds. If this story resonated with you, don't let its impact end here. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Commit to seeing people for who they truly are, not what preconceptions suggest they should be. And if you believe in creating a world where everyone truly belongs, subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire, challenge, and unite us all in creating the change we wish to see.